Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, Blister confronts the skeletons in his closet. Is it a fair fight if he's got guts and they don't? All joking aside, Blister truly is brave if he's going to face the old, rotten nightmares buried in his past. It's one of the hardest things any person or creature can do. Clearly, Blister is made of sternum stuff. To be honest, the old Blister would have sung his own praises and tooted his own horn, which in this case would have to be a trombone. Luckily, the new and improved Blister is too busy recruiting reinforcements to take on Dr. Van Sangfreud's army of ORBSs. So far, he's assembled a skeleton crew that includes Bile, Scab and her rat pack, Orville Whitmore, and Gorgeous George. But he can't stop there. If he's to rescue Muck, Spindle, and Rip, he must sculpt his own bona-fide battalion. Once he's procured that bonanza, toppling the superior evil force that is Dr. Van Sangfreud is really a sweet bonus. All I can say is Blister must definitely care for Muck. What else would spur him to go searching for ravenous wharf rats? Does he honestly think he can reason with those vicious food vacuums? Actually, there's a secret in Blister's past. A massive skeleton stuffed in a closet that could sway the wharf rats to his cause. Even so, if Blister can't face that secret, he's done for. Game over. Bon appetit, wharf rats. Episode 12. Into the Hools. Before the city of Black Rust existed, a fishing village inhabited the shores between the fingers of the old, murky river. Inhabited is true, but persisted is more accurate. Despite the seasonal floods of sludge and the habitually muddy terrain, the villagers persisted, stubborn as warts. As a reward for their faithful constancy, the villagers received a Viking invasion. The Vikings emerged from the mists in their long boats, long oars crawling the water like insect legs. Carved heads of ferocious monsters topped the long necks of the stem ports in front and back of these longboats. Rather than plunder and depart, as pillagers tend to do, these Vikings settled in. They employed the underground caverns for storing the treasures brought back from their raids. The treasure hoards grew fat, and so did the Vikings. At last, it was impossible to distinguish a Viking from a wealthy businessman. Around the same time, it was easy to mistake the village for a blossoming town. One day, a flotilla of fat ships crowned with many sails brought Dutch traders to the town's shores. With their wondrous wares from around the world and a gift for skillful bargaining, the tradesmen gradually drained all the treasures out of the caverns. Rather than profit and depart, as negotiators tend to do, the tradesmen settled down. They refilled the caverns with currency, including coins, jewels, and gold bullions. They built a city over the town, and they named the city Black Rust. They boxed the oozing channels of the river's arm, wrist, and fingers into stone-lined canals. This step curbed much of the river's flooding and served to dry up some of the mud. To this day, those stone canal walls still stand, guiding the river to places where it can disperse its dark sludge into the sea like an infected cut, leaking brown juices into the bloodstream. It was to these walls that Blister traveled when he departed from Orville's office at the zoo. Specifically, he sought the wrist of the river, that place where the one large stream split apart into many fingers. Holes perforated the canal walls at the river's wrist. Actually, these gaps, called hools by some, holes or hollers by others, pocked every mile of the canals across the city, but they were most plentiful around the wrist. The hools, or if you prefer, holes or hollers, served as entrances into small excavated tunnels carved and constructed by fossorial creatures, that is, those who dig. Intricate networks of tunnels, bubbling with burrows and chambers, branched the soil flanking the river. These networks were much like the sets badgers construct. Erratic raindrops spat the streets. Gusting winds scuffed the surface of the dingy river, which ran low with the tide out. Blister climbed over the canal wall and picked his way around clumps of shaggy, sour moss and threads of dry, crisp algae. Blister smelled the entrance of a hool before he saw it. For a long moment, he held fast to the stonework. He perceived the quickening steps of his heart crunching up some staircase that evidently led into his head. He told himself it was a rush of confidence. His plan was definitely not stupid, and it would definitely work, and he would definitely execute it perfectly. He entered the hool. The dark is not always the inky, opaque liquid we assume it to be. Given enough time, most eyes can adjust to low light and will etch the edges of vague shapes. Rats, however, can see in the dark. While their eyes are designed for night vision, by no means do they see as crisp and detailed as we do by day. Night vision is exactly as the name suggests, a vision made of night. It is to see through a lens made of moon dust mixed with sleepy shadows. Through this lens, Blister observed the rounded tunnel walls. He observed the webbings of mold and spider threads netting the soil in place. Hairy roots sometimes combed his back, belly, or sides. On more than one occasion, other passages forked off the long tunnel. Blister always chose the breathing path, the one with moving air currents. Sometimes he heard a soft ticking or clicking. The sounds were almost like Spindle's greedy mealtime munchings. Almost, but not quite. Rippled behind him. Then, as if in response, a stuttered in the dark ahead. Blister tried to compile a picture of the noisemakers by combining sensory information from his ears, whiskers, and nose. He sensed something, or some things, there, but determined neither their distance nor their size before the sense faded and he knew he was, once again, alone. At last, the tunnel entered a large cavity. Blister stood inside a sort of mighty mud hall with a ceiling made of rotten boats. Indeed, he had arrived at the site of a shipyard, swallowed in a sludgy flood many ages ago. Back then, the long ships would have been arranged side alongside, propped on sawhorse brackets. Their keels pointed skyward, allowing holes to be patched and then sealed with resin. Inside the mud hall, the sawhorses were long gone, but the upside-down ships remained in their rows, suspended in air, held in place by the ancient mud. They created an arched roof over the dank chamber. The carved monster heads on the stem ports dangled down. Busted rib cages of curved support beams spanned the hulls. The thwarts, or planks where rowers sat, had nearly all fallen out of their couplings. They formed a patchwork tile floor. It was not until Blister stood at the center of the hall that he realized the room was not empty. More accurately, the space was unoccupied, but the nooks, crannies, and crevices all around the space held innumerable creatures. More packed into the hollows above the old boats. Blister smelled their warmth. He sensed their weight on the air. He heard them breathe. He could do everything but see them. They saw him. The tingle in his whiskers told him that much, and told him quite clearly. Judging from the warmth available to his feet, those creatures must have been recently sleeping on the thwarted floor. Only moments ago had they silently scattered into their present hiding places. Blister's heart ran laps up and down the staircase between his chest and head. He opened his mouth to speak, but found the conditions therein too dry to form words. He cleared his throat and tried again.
Sorry to bother you, but
But what? What could he possibly say to appease wharf rats lurking in their hool? Maybe this idea was a bad one. The intensity of that possibility struck him with the force of a blacksmith's hammer. And yet, he could not just turn and leave. He had to see this through.
You see, I was all alone once, a long time ago. I had a family, but then I lost them. I don't mean I misplaced them. I mean, well, there was this train and it derailed. Anyway, it hit the place where we lived and it doesn't matter. The point is, I was alone after that and you found me.
Soon after he began to speak, Blister felt the words coming from a sore and tender spot where nothing had budged for years. The words staggered out like prisoners freed from heavy chains in lightless dungeons. The memories evoked with those words did not stagger. They catapulted, hot and fast as cannonballs. In an instant, he saw his tiny young self surrounded by haggard shadows, cloaked in seaweed and spangled with brown claws. Their white seed eyes ringed around him. He recalled the strange ticks and clicks of their own private language. He recalled the busted, shattered words they cobbled together. He could join their family, eat well, live long. An offer wharf rats extend only to orphans. But the young, fear-rattled Blister did not want to join their family. His dazed and senseless heart warned that if he took on a new family, then his old family would never return. He did not articulate this to the wharf rats then. He only told them he did not want to be part of their family, at which point they delivered his other option. If he did not want to join them, then he would have to outrun them. The haunted memories passed, leaving Blister alone in the great mud hall of overturned longboats.
I found a new family, but they are in trouble now. I need your help.
The clickings rustled on brittle paper air. Some issued overhead, some crackled on either side. Call and response, question and answer, statement and argument. Blister rushed on to explain as succinctly as possible about the castle on Tenebrous Hill, Yana, and the trapped creatures. The silence which followed worried him more than the ticks and clicks. At last he heard, the soft and liquid sounds gurgled and hissed from a throat accustomed to more jagged communication. Blister's whiskers practically yanked the darkness, trying to pin down the location of the speaker. His moon-dust gaze swept the hall, finding no one and nothing. All the while, his mind scrambled to assemble the meaning of the message. What was the designated spokesrat trying to tell him? The speaker sped up the utterance, now tinged with impatience. Blister caught the meaning.
Family. Yes, my new family. They need help.
Another long and sweltering silence followed. For a moment, the hall seemed to empty. The tug on the air of many bodies vanished. The darkness chilled. Blister wondered if the wharf rats found his proposition so unappealing they simply abandoned their hiding places and departed through exits he could not see. But then the thwart boards beneath his feet hummed. The air ripped in half with a sudden rush of energy coming at him. Through the lunar haze of his night vision, he glimpsed dark blobs sliding through the broken boat ribs. It was a command, that much he knew. But to do what? Blister translated the order. Run. But he could not. His shoulders seemed to have fallen down around his ankles. If he ran, he would trip over himself and fall. Not knowing how he did it, Blister took to all four paws and ran from the black flood filling the hall. The dark blobs funneled down the tunnel close on his tail. Blister ran faster. He ran so fast, he was never sure his paws touched the ground. He ran so fast, his heart seemed to have been launched several yards ahead, and if he ever wanted to draw breath again, he would have to catch it and swallow it whole. Who could have guessed that having a bone to pick with wharf rats would result in such a narrow escape? This whole facing the past and confronting skeletons and closets deal is not all it's cracked up to be a. Tune in next time to find out if Blister outruns the bloodthirsty wharf rats. Or is he here today and gone tomorrow? In the meantime, stop by blisterandmuck.com and use the contact form to tell me what you think will happen next. Know any skeleton jokes better or worse than these? What did the skeleton tell the bartender? Give me a beer and a mop. Why do skeletons ride motorcycles? Because they're bone to be wild. Share your jokes and I'll give you a shout out when I share it on the show. You'll never miss an episode when you subscribe to the show directly at blisterandmuck.com. Subscribing is free, and you get an email alert as soon as the newest episode releases. You'll also find extra fun fact resources tied to the topics we discuss. For instance, this week, you can discover more about Magawa, a heroic rescue rat just like Blister. Magawa died earlier this month, but for 5 of his 8 living years, he scuttled across Cambodia sniffing out landmines. Landmines are bombs hidden underground that are designed to explode when they are stepped on. Millions of landmines are hidden across Cambodia, and they have killed over 19,000 people. They've injured many, many more, and quite often they harm children playing outside. Magawa was small enough to search for landmines without setting them off. He covered over 141,000 square miles, or 20 soccer fields, in his lifetime. Shortly before he died, he received a gold medal for his bravery. Learn so much more about Magawa when you visit blisterandmuck.com. While you're at the website, I encourage you to please lend your support by making a donation or by selecting a cozy, colorful hat, shirt, or face mask from the Blister and Muck gift shop. A portion of your purchase helps cover the costs of web hosting, sound effects, and music licensing. And you'll find a special surprise from the entire Blister and Muck crew has been enclosed with your order. And if money is not a ghost that frequently haunts your home, you can definitely support the show by giving it some stars or a positive review on whatever app or platform you use to listen along. Reviews and likes help other listeners discover this madcap caper. Special thanks to Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional music from Komiku, Loyalty Freak Music, Kevin MacLeod, and John Bartman. Mike Koenig sloshed the ocean. Flathill brought the thunder. Mark D'Angelo rustled up the wind. Creepy sounds from Daniel Simon and Mike Koenig. All other sounds from the public domain. Because their support never wavers, I think my family, friends, and fans are truly debonair. One for one, and all for you.